So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a credible information for you today, and this is very, very beautiful. So, if somebody had told me that there is a country in Africa that would tell the United Nations that, look, this is what I want you to do in Africa. Do you know that Africa has no seat in the United Nations Security Council? Like, Africa has no seat. Burkina Faso, let's just call it what it is. The persona non grata thing is too respectful. Dismissed the United Nations representative. I mean, this is the first African country that I'm seeing taking a bold step of this magnitude. I don't think any other person, apart from the Sahelian, can do this. Burkina Faso dismissed that lady. And guess what the United Nations did? They initially tried to, we won't take that. The evidences are not substantial. But ladies and gentlemen, last, the United Nations caved. Because today, the United Nations have just appointed an interim representative to Burkina Faso, who is now going to be residential, who is now going to take over the apartment of the previous woman. We pray that there's no transfer of spirit from the old person to the new person. If not, anybody can get it. Every chicken tree now in Burkina Faso is now a target for persona non grata. So, the United Nations appoints its new interim acting coordinator, Mr. Maurice Azunanko. That's the new name of the coordinator. So now the impressive thing about this news is we have a country in Africa that speaks, and an organization like United Nations respects it. This is what we want Africa to radiate. This is what we want Africa, to show to the world. Respect. That is it. Respect and nothing more. Sovereignty and nothing more. When you decide, the world must listen. Burkina Faso has now decided that it won't be subservient to any organization or any nation on the planet. They would not trade sovereignty with anything. And that is what we are seeing right there. You will want what Burkina Faso wants in Burkina Faso territory. And that's what we have seen right there. That's a very good development, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for the Burkinabé administration and the Burkinabé people. They're doing a fantastic job. Now, Air France said, Air France, the Air France that left Burkina Faso without being provoked. I think France actually overestimated themselves. That's one of the biggest mistakes that France did. They overestimated themselves, and they sort of looked at themselves like the golden goose, whereas they were never the golden goose. Burkina was the golden goose. And France was supposed to be taking care of Burkina Faso. It actually broke my heart when I heard that Burkina did not even have 5,000 kilometers of paved road. Look at how much clay and sand you have in that country. Yet, France mined in this country almost like forever. They were even contributing above 60% of the African Union, monetary budget, because they almost turned Africa to Europe. Africa was like the lesser Europe before, until we now have, the true sons of Africa that are now standing up for Africa now. If your president is still dancing with the West, then you have a puppet, So, according to the information we have, Air France says, we are ready to resume operation in Burkina Faso. The only hindrance has been the government's refusal of our operation. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this statement? Right? Among all the countries in the world, Europe is there for you. South America is there for you. I mean, there is even a South American country where I think France has a lot of influence, right? There is this French colony in South America. You can fly to all those, you can fly to wherever you want to. You can become the GMO mosquito. You can do whatever you want. But Burkina Faso said, don't return here. And Burkina Faso did not say, leave here. But Burkina Faso made sure they said, don't return here. You know what France did? France acted like the local, African wives. When you actually, maybe you have an argument and they don't agree with you, the next thing they pack their bags, they want to leave. So, Air France actually packed their flight, and next thing they did was that they told Burkina that we are suspending flights for now, thinking that every Burkinabe, their biggest dream in life is to go to Paris. That's the biggest dream of every, should I say, blindfolded black person. You want to go to London, you want to go to Paris, you want to go to Washington, New York, Miami. To be honest, our people need to open their eyes. Build wherever you want to be in your country. Build the peace you want. Invest in the future you want here. You want your kid to be secured? Invest in your community. Preach the security you want. Help people. Like, do what you need to do within your society. You know why I'm so comfortable where I am? Because I don't run from the street. If I get out of my house right now, where I live now, it's like everybody literally knows me. I bump fists with almost every. I don't have no enemy. I don't have a permanent friend. I'm just good to everyone. Help whichever way I can, and I'm on my way. That's the greatest security. The greatest security is, being in harmony with the people. I'm so loved by the people. And I can tell you, in my office, literally everybody in my office actually dislike, the United States. Because I radiate what I preach. I'm not preaching. This is not content. Me in the real life is like the 2.0 of me talking on the screen. I'm telling you, whatever knowledge I've passed across here, physically, I've overpassed it to people. So let's go forward. So now that, why the question is, why is France saying that they are ready? Why are they continuously saying that they are ready to resume operation? In Burkina Faso, you have been flying your jets, they call it ghost jets, and what they do is that when they want to fly into the Burkinabé airspace from Ivory Coast, they turn off the transponder, so the radar systems will not be able to to discover the flight. And I feel like these are reconnaissance aircraft that is able to detect, movements and all of that. But when France was not allowed into Burkina Faso, if they had shown the character of true repentance, we are sorry for what we did all this year. Okay, we'll pray reparation. We just want to leave. There are many ways of doing this. But you stayed in neighboring country, you started behaving like a common criminal. Your flight will not return back to Burkina Faso. Me, personally, I'm declaring now that France is not going to return back to Burkina Faso. I don't even want the French airline to return back to Burkina Faso because, it can kind of bring back that colonial mindset to some people that are already getting denazified. Because there is something going on in the Sahel right now. The Sahelians are decolonizing themselves, and some of them are in the process of denazifying themselves because some of these terrorists that you're seeing, the JNIM, the AES Sahel, the FLAs, I think these guys are Nazis, in my own opinion. And I think what the farmers of Mali, the fan of Niger and the Burkinabé armed forces, what they are doing is that they are denazifying this set of individuals. For every skirmish, for every battle that they win, they have been able to denazify the enemy. You get what I'm saying? Let's go to the next information, which is very, very important for this denazification strategy. But before we get to that, Burkina Faso actually, on their visit to Novosibirsk in Russia today, they actually made a proposal to Russia that they want a situation where there will be a direct flight from Russia to Ouagadougou, from Ouagadougou to Russia, Now people will now start from Burkina Faso. We now start traveling more to Russia for business, for economy, for a lot of things, for tourism, for visits. Like, that's a very, very beautiful thing right there. Block the old French channel, resume to Russia. And, based on what we are seeing, France have been in Burkina Faso for how many years? What can we show for those years they've been in Burkina Faso? Only plundering and theft and dehumanization. But now that Russia is there, within how many years? Can we not see the scores on the board? We can all speak based on our emotion, right? But one thing that don't lie is contextualize facts and statistics. And that is what Russia is putting on the board. You get what I'm saying? Not like the United States that is asking for lithium and gold. So let's move forward, right? Can we say that Burkina Faso is denazifying the terrorists, in the Sahel? They are neutralizing, but I don't want to call it neutralizing of terrorists. I want to say there are Nazis in Sahel, and what the Burkinabé armed forces and the Malian armed forces and the Nigerians are doing is that they are helping Africa to denazify. So in the region of Titao province, there was a skirmish between the Burkina Faso Rapid Intervention Brigade, Battalion 21, and some Nazi forces. In the JNIM, they actually engaged in some skirmishes. The pictures are over here. We have the pictures on our Telegram channel. The link is going to be in the description if you want to see what the Burkinabé, Rapid Intervention Brigade just did today. The terrorists actually ambushed, but the terrorists, they overestimated themselves and they underestimated, the capability, the combat capability of the Burkinabé armed forces. And ladies and gentlemen, it only turned out one way. We had bowels outside. We had a lot of very diabolic scene right there. So that's another, demilitarization and denazification process that just went down right there. But it didn't stop in Burkina Faso because we've been too quiet recently. There have been peace. When this type of stubborn enemy that we have here, when they become very peaceful and quiet, it means that they've taken a lot of whooping. But no, I think we have resumed. Because they choose to resume, we have resumed the whooping again. So now in Mali, in the region of Tissit, right, several terrorists were neutralized today. Right, they were neutralized, and these are not the notorious JNIM. These are not the FLA. These are the AES Sahel. And in this neutralization, after a lot of these elements were neutralized, two of their leaders were neutralized along with them. This was in a precision guided drone strike by the Malian armed forces. The names of the two terrorist leaders, that were neutralized. Number one is Abu Arera, and number two is Faisal Intervalin. These two are international terrorists, and they have just been neutralized. Now, that is not all the thing. That's not everything that the farmers of Mali did in a day. Apart from these two that have been neutralized, there is another skirmish that happened between the African Corps and the FLA today. In a counter-offensive, the FLA actually launched a drone, an FPV drone, which was actually jammed by the African Corps. The drone jammed, the drone dropped, it was recovered clean. You can see the picture right here, clean, untouched. They actually recovered it untouched. And what did they do? They traced the control center and they neutralized every single FLA in that location. Ladies and gentlemen, that is another big, counter-offensive by the Malians. But, the only thing they will say is that, the Malian troops, they are committing war crimes, they are doing this, they are doing that. But ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about all these developments? Each fight, every preaching is another step towards total liberty of the Sahelian states. One country that used to be the poorest on the African soil before. Like when we tell you that you are from Ouagadougou, like when we don't even call it Ouagadougou, we call it Ouagadougou in my country. When we say you look like someone from Ouagadougou, we're actually saying that you look like a very poor person. But you get this is what I think. I think this is not just France's war. I think this is a European war. Because if you look at Europe now on the global landscape, what the United States did to Europe was United States actually saw that Europe was already they were already growing wings. Remember when the United States attacked Iraq, right? You know, the EU did not support the United States. And the United States looked at it like, whoa, you are supposed to be a certified puppet. And you dare to stand up to us? What did the United States did? The United States had to Nazify Ukraine, and Ukraine was the channel through which, because when EU started standing up to the United States looked at it that, okay, the only thing that is giving you the cojones to stand up to us is because I think the Russian gas is what is really, really helping. So what did they do? They had to stir up the conflict in Ukraine. That's why you see that everybody is saying that whatever the United States and Russia decides could be the final. But Europe has been sabotaged. Europe economy has been arrested completely. I think Europe is almost nothing at this point because the Nord Stream pipe was blown up. You know, the Duisburg pipe has been blown up recently with Hungary. I know Russia and Hungary will still fix that. But, you know, the energy sovereignty of Europe has been taken away. Now the economy is plunging into recession. Europe is now becoming a global puppet, or like they are not even doing it covertly again. We are now saying it that Europe has now become a puppet. So, I mean, you know, they now have to buy from America. Now, America is saying that they are going to collaborate with Russia to build back the Nord Stream pipe. Now they're going to, the German Nord Stream 2, that they're going to build it again, that they are in talks with Russia to, you know, get it back working. And, you know, Europe will now be buying their gas for a serious amount of money from the United States. You know, so their energy sovereignty was taken away. Now, why was their energy sovereignty taken away? Because America was looking for a way to turn Europe against Russia. If you turn Europe against Russia, you know, Europe's sovereignty will be out. So when America speaks, Europe will have no other option than to be the yes, 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 yes man. And that is the situation that Europe is right now. Now, you know, America is still trying to play the game with China and Russia and everything like that. And you see, the only hope for Europe at this point is to turn back to Africa. And that is why the Sahel crisis is hotter than ever. Forget all the funding that Europe is funding the war in Ukraine. It's not Europe. Look, Ukraine is not the main. That is why you see most of the weapons you are finding them with terrorists in the Sahel. Ukraine is not the target. They don't give a damn about Ukraine. The target is the Sahel. They've lost this war. They've lost this war. They've lost the war completely. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Give us your opinion in the comment section below. I love to hear you guys' opinion. Honestly, I learn a lot from your opinion. I read every comment in the comment section. If you check my previous comment, you see that I always answer every single comment in my comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, I've missed you today, but I'm back. It's your boy 72 Andre signing out. Enough said. Before I go, much respect, much love, and 72 salutes. See you on the next video.